All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to come in and get situated.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Super excited to do this with you guys.
Yes. All right. Should next time have some background music on.
I know it's like this with Instagram lives too, where you're just like,
Yep, I'm scrolling to find everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome. If you're just joining, we're going to be getting started here in just a few minutes. So grab your favorite beverage, have your lunch, whatever time zone you're in. We're going to get started in just a few.
Hey, while we're waiting, just a huge congratulations again to you on your award.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really, really fun. It was very unexpected. So we had to hop on a plane with zero heads up. But it was
So you had no idea it was coming.
No, we applied to be a part of this, and they got I want to say it was almost 1,500 applicants or something, of companies. And we heard the week before. So it was
amazing.
Super last minute. They were like, yeah, please come down. We've, selected you as a winner. So it was really cool. And it was a big testament to our team.
So for those listening in, the big award, what was the exact title, or what was?
Yeah, it's called the TIE 50. So there's a international, and here in the US as well, company called TIE, and they invest in kind of early stage startups across all of the states and internationally as well. And they host this annual award where they recognize the top 50 startups of the year to watch and invest in. And we were honored with that award just last week. It was very cool just to be recognized on such a large stage.
That's incredible. Well, congratulations again. I think it says so much about your work ethic and what you're building, and just a testament to the character behind your business too.
Yeah. It was wonderful. And it was just, such a good morale boost for the team that's working so hard day in, day out. So it was very cool. And thank you for.
I feel like probably any business owner that's tuning into this, we need those kind of affirmations, just someone else being like, yes, you're on the right track. I feel like there's, over my last 21 years of business, there's been so many times where I've wanted to give in, or just give up, I should say. And I feel like right at the perfect timing, something comes in and you get some kind of acknowledgement or reward or something that helps. That helps. Yeah, just
Totally. And it keeps you going.
Yes.
It's so important to have that, because it's hard. Everybody here, everyone's working really hard. So it's nice when you get recognized, whether it's completing a wedding, getting a good review, getting an award, it just is so meaningful.
Well, hopefully that opens up more doors for you guys. And yeah.
Oh my gosh, right? Yes, I hope so. Okay, cool. Well, I think that we should probably go ahead and get started on things. So, first of all, welcome everybody. We are just beyond thrilled to be talking with Steve from Sinclair and Moore about pricing techniques. And we're going to be, talking about kind of different businesses. So Steve has a floral and a planning business. I come from a planning background. So we're going to mainly focus on those. But if you are in a different industry, please let us know. We're happy to chat about that as well. So, this topic, it really seemed to kind of strike a chord with people. We had an amazing turnout, lots of awesome questions during the registration. So we're very excited to be diving in. But before, just a few housekeeping things. So if everybody wants to go ahead and in the chat, just mention where you're from and your business name, we would love just to know where everyone's coming in from. And say hi. And then, we're going to be chatting probably for about 40-ish minutes or so. And then we are going to be answering those questions that came in. And at the end, we're also going to be doing a live Q&A. Katie here from Rock, Paper, Coin is going to be managing the chat for us. So drop your questions. If you need anything during the webinar, please let us know. The webinar is being recorded. So for those who were not able to make it, or for you, you do not need to worry about taking notes. We are going to be following up with everybody to a link to this recording so that you have all of these tips right at your fingertips. So okay, let's dive in. So to just go ahead and kick things off, I think it would be really good for us to just kind of talk about like markets and market research. And it's really important to know like who we're serving and the ideal client that we're kind of going after. So maybe Steve, you could kind of just start with like a general overview, like when you were getting started, like, did you do research? Did you talk to competition? Kind of dive in there.
Totally. Gosh, when I was first getting going, I did not do market research. I didn't know what I was doing. I just had a passion for creating beauty, and I knew what I wanted to do. And so instead of doing market research, what I did was I went to where I knew I had a little bit of influence, and I was known by some people. I had moved away from my college town, but I decided to move back to my college town because I had done a handful of weddings there for some pretty prominent people within that community. And I knew that if I was in that community, that it would start from there. I didn't really know what I was doing or where to start. Honestly, I don't even think I knew what the term market research meant back then. And that was 21 years ago. So it really was just jumping in and I think relying on word of mouth and building relationships at first. That was the first phase. It was a very small college town. When my wife and I decided to move to a bigger city, so down to Seattle, and when we decided to move down there and move the business down there, that is when I did decide to start doing some market research, and looking into like, okay, who do I want to serve? What kind of people are going to be my clients? It went from being like, whoever is willing to hire me, I'll do the wedding for them, almost out of like desperation and this, not desperation, I would say more gratitude of like, oh my goodness, they're willing to take a chance on me, like, or oh my goodness, like they actually want to use me. I went from that mindset to like, okay, now I'm going to target my client and I'm going to figure out like who is going to be the best person for me? Who do I enjoy working with? Who can afford me so I can kind of move into this more luxury market? And who is going to help push my business forward as I get to do beautiful weddings for them that they can afford, they can pay me what I'm worth finally. And so I did more market research at that point.
Yeah, great. And I think it's really interesting that you had that mindset kind of shift when you were moving to Seattle. You were one of the like first kind of luxury planners for that market. And so was there competition? Did you reach out? Or like, were you friendly with them?
Yeah, it's funny. When I moved to Seattle, there was so I lived in a little town called Bellingham. It was about an hour and 45 minutes from Seattle, and that's where I started. And I remember up there, I was just like, if I could ever get a wedding in Seattle, then I've made it, and I thought like Seattle was the end all be all. At the time, there was a handful of wedding planners that I had followed for quite a while, and you'd get Seattle Bride magazine, and their work was always in it. They were always on the cover. They were always winning the best of awards. And I think when I moved down there, I was like, well, I'll never be at their level. And so I'm just going to try to do the best that I can. Not to sell myself short, but I think I just thought so highly of them and I respected. I mean, these were people that like I looked up to as I was starting my own business. And so I think I just honored them so much in my mind that I'm like, I'll never be there, but there's got to be more weddings in this area. I didn't reach out to them just because I'm one, a little introverted, two, shy, and I think at the time also just really insecure as well. And I think I was like, why would they ever want to meet with me? So I didn't. But there was really at the time only like 3 or 4 people, and I think what I quickly learned was like, there is always room for more people at the table, and there's always people getting engaged, and that each business that's in a market really brings something unique to the table that is for a set group of people. So even if you look at what feels like a saturated market, it's like figuring out what makes you unique to that market, and then capitalize on that, and you start attracting the people that are perfect for that, and the people that are willing to pay you, again, what you're worth.
Yeah, that's super interesting. How did your mindset kind of shift around competition as you started to get bigger, and then people were starting to look at you as a mentor and somebody that was kind of setting, trends, pricing, or even just floral trends in the industry? Like, were you willing to share things with competition, and how did you view it?
Totally. I think how my mindset shifted a little bit was, so it's funny, we moved to Seattle on like May 1st, and later that month, we were actually named best wedding planner in Seattle. So like, it kind of came quick, and we were in the magazine as like Seattle's best wedding planner. And I think what I realized was, I'm just an ordinary person, and they've had this award before, and they're just an ordinary person. We're all just ordinary people with the same goal of like trying to pay our mortgage each month, and trying to set ourselves up for success and build something. We're all just trying to build something. Some of us are at different stages of trying to build something, but we're all in this together trying to build. And I think that when I received that award, and I think as I felt so undeserving of it, I think in my mind, I'm like, oh wow, these other people probably felt that same way too. The other thing that made me shift my mindset a little bit was I met some of these people. And I think, I met some of them, and I was like, oh wow, you were so much dreamier in my imagination than like what this is actually coming down to in my life. And I'm like, I've had you on a pedestal for like 8 years, and
Yes.
now I've met you, and it felt very like unwelcoming to me and very unkind. And I think I felt like there was a lot of closed doors and a lot of unwillingness to help. And I think I would listen to people talk about each other and each other's businesses, and almost I would see this like celebration if they thought someone was failing, or if they thought someone was struggling, or if a business would go out. And so it felt a little cutthroat and negative to me. And I was like, I want to change the tune of this story. If I'm going to be named like a top planner here, and as people started like more followers on Instagram, this is when Instagram was really, for me, growing, and we are kind of growing a platform. I was like, okay, if I do have any kind of platform and people are looking up to me, like my biggest nightmare would be for someone to meet me and then say, oh my gosh, I wish I had never met him. Like I wish I could have just had that dreamy view of him in my mind because I met him and he's horrible. Like that would have been like my greatest nightmare. And so I think as my whole goal was like, okay, if I'm going to have this platform, like I want to teach, I want to build up the next generation. I want to encourage them and help them. So I've always been a really big open book with, this is how I do things. This is what worked for me. It might not work for you, but this is how it works for me. That's when we started doing like online courses and workshops and things like that. And I think I found a lot of joy in helping people out. And what I learned as well is other people's success is not a knock on my success. Other people's success is not something I have to threaten. And the more I celebrated other people growing and succeeding, kind of the happier person I was. And there's room at the table, like I said, for everyone.
Yep. Oh my gosh, I just love that so much. So I think that's a perfect segue into kind of getting into some of the meat of it. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, like we're all here to pay our mortgages. We're all here to make money. And I think in our industry particularly, there can be some shame around like saying that you're you need to make money. And there's this expectation that like, you just need to cover your costs and that this isn't a very profitable industry. But I think it's starting to shift and we're really turning that upside down as an industry and talking more about money, talking about how to make a profit. So I would love if you could just kind of like take us through some of your mindset, like throughout your career of like when you started, like what were some of your pricing strategies versus in today, you know, how are you looking at that different?
Totally. Well, I'll just say when I started, I want to go back for a second and kind of touch on one thing that you just said, you know, as this industry is unique in the sense where there is kind of this mindset of oftentimes of like, we don't need to make money or we shouldn't make money. Or I think I've talked to people, they feel guilty about charging. And I'm like, but this is an industry where we work harder and are more committed and are kind of on call for like 24 hours a day for like 2 years for some of these people. We work so hard, like why shouldn't we be compensated for that? Like it blows my mind sometimes that clients and sometimes other vendors think that like it's wrong to make money off of this. So it is a business. It is a way that we're making money. This isn't just for player to go on a vacation or to have some extra money to put the kid through private school. Like this is our livelihood, you know, and this is survival, really. I think the industry, as you said, is changing, but I think a lot of it came down to because of COVID. COVID like rocked our industry. A lot of businesses did not make it. Just, you know, as we lost our income for a year or 2 years, it was hard. It still is hard. I'm still clawing my way out of the hole that COVID put us into. And so now I think more than ever, you have vendors who, the ones that are left over, you have vendors that are like, I'm not taking shit from anyone anymore. You know, like I've worked so hard and have so little to show from it. And I think this mindset has shifted of, I cannot keep doing this and working as hard as I am.
Yeah.
So I think it's more than ever that we as an industry, one, charge what we're worth and kind of unite in that. So it's not, well, these people over here aren't really charging anything, so I'm just going to run over here. Like we have to have some kind of, in my opinion, industry guidelines or standards, or just a camaraderie of like, we're going to all charge what we're worth.
Yeah.
My mindset has shifted over the years. You know, when I first started, failing was not an option. My father had recently passed away, and there were responsibilities on me. I wasn't married yet. I was very much single, and but there were responsibilities on me that I had to help financially contribute to my family, in the absence of my father not being there as the provider anymore. And so I was young. I had to like make enough money to both pay for myself, but also to be able to send money home to help with the expenses that were coming in there. So failing was never an option. So the very first time I met with a potential client, I actually had rent that was due a couple days later, and I had to send money home. And I had, I think like maybe at this point, like $400 or $500 left in my account, which was not enough for rent or to send home or really anything. So I went into that meeting and I knew how much I had to pay in the next 5 days. And that's what I charged. Like, that's what I charged. No, and I was like, I was inwardly terrified because I'm like, I needed them to say yes and sign the contract immediately and pay me immediately so I could run to the bank and get the money in there. There was so much riding on that, and I had to hold my head up high and outwardly look confident. Inside, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. The contract is one that I just downloaded off of a template. And I was a hot mess. That's how I started, you know, and my original pricing again was just like based on survival. This is what I need this month. So every time a new client would come, I'd be like, okay, well, this is how much I need right now. So I'll just charge them that much money. And such a silly way to run business. And what was happening was I would get to the end of the wedding and I'd look back and I would have barely broken even with my expenses, barely broken even, or I didn't even break even. I was putting some of their wedding on a credit card, and some of my expenses on a credit card. Like that's how I started. And so my mindset had to shift, or I was going to have to end my business. So kind of my next step was like, okay, I need to start making money where I could then start putting money away in savings. And so little by little, I just started increasing my pricing. And it was every time I would say a number and I would like read their response, their facial expressions, their twitch, how long before they said yes. And when people would not hesitate, I would raise my prices immediately the very next time. And then I would raise it again and raise it again. I remember the first time someone paid me $5,000. Like I thought I was gonna pee my pants. I thought I had made it. I was like, $5,000. But then I got to the end of that wedding and I barely broke even, and I was consistently barely breaking even.
Yeah.
I had to shift my mindset again, and I had to really say, what am I worth? What is my time worth? I had to look through like ahead to like, what are all my expenses really going to be? And what I had been doing was like guessing what they might be willing to pay, guessing what I thought I needed to have, and just saying arbitrary numbers. I had to actually sit down and do the math, consider my expenses, consider surprises, consider if I was going to pay people, consider like all the different things that could possibly happen and come up with that number. And then I had to figure out like, okay, I don't want to just break even. How much money do I want to have in savings at the end of this year? And I added up everything. And then I wanted to figure out how many weekends do I want to work in a year? And it was a simple math problem of like, what are my expenses? What are my, like, what do I want to account for that I'm not thinking of yet? How much do I want to save? And where do I want to be? And then I just did the math problem. I want to do 15 weddings a year, 20 weddings a year. So I'm like, I need to make X amount per wedding. And then I just started charging that.
It's interesting. I think, it's really interesting to actually sit down and know what your costs are, because I think for us, when in the industry, you're first selling a service, like in the consultation, it's me you're booking and I'm providing the service. And you often forget the fixed costs that are associated with each, vendor category in this industry. How do you look at pricing, like physical goods, like, the frogs, the chicken wire? Like, do you mark those up, or do you look at that more as like a one-time like fee for every client?
No, it's a great question. And if you've taken any of my other courses, most of those were made before COVID, and I have shifted a bit in how I price things out. I used to charge I would take their budget, and then I would just figure out like, okay, say they want to spend 10 grand on flowers. I would say like, okay, this is how much I need to make out of that. This is how much I'm going to need for flowers. And I would back out of that the expense for all of those different supplies. And it worked. Honestly, I ran my business like that for years, and we were very successful in that way. And I stand behind that pricing method. I think for me, as I then shifted my business, and after COVID, and I think as people were also more aware, with our kind of precarious economy, I wanted to show also, as I moved into like another higher end tier, I wanted people to actually really understand where their money was going. So I did start itemizing things quite a bit more, and just saying like, okay, generally this is what the flowers are costing. This is these are the supplies that we have to have, the infrastructure, so that they understand infrastructure costs money. Like it's not just the flowers, it's the ribbon, the tape, the chicken wire, the vessels, like the frogs. I mean, if you've ever bought a floral frog, I mean, those are 50, 60 bucks a piece, and I'm sorry, the plastic ones from Amazon don't cut it. You saw me trying to use those at the workshop. Like they're not as good.
Where are my metal ones?
Yes, they're not as good. So it all adds up. And I want people to understand, like, I'm not price gouging you. This is what things are costing. I'm very transparent. I say like, this is where I'm making my money and I'm charging for this. This is even what the staffing cost is going to be. So by itemizing all these different things out, I have found that there was a greater understanding and a greater appreciation for what I do. Because I think you can just look at the bottom number. I think it's easier for clients just to see like, I'm paying this much, and picture you going home at night, jumping on your bed and throwing the money in the air and, making it rain. And that's not the case at
Yeah.
all, ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So with the physical goods, do you mark up like the chicken wire? Do you, ensure that you're covering your costs, and then a little bit for yourself left over for the effort of ordering and, shipping and getting all of that product in?
Totally. I think for the sake of transparency, because you can find the cost of anything these days online, just with a very quick Google search, and a lot of my clientele now are CFOs of company and CEOs of company, people that are smart with their money and they're not just mindlessly spending. And so for the sake of integrity, I personally, I might not line item each little thing like frog per frog this. I think I'll just say supplies, and then I will put an accurate amount for supplies. I'll probably pad it a little bit because there's always unexpected stuff. There's always something you think that you have to overnight. Also, any penny that comes into your account, you are paying taxes on. So I am padding it for that, but I'm not like doubling or tripling the cost of that. The money that I am making is going to be off of a design fee that I would charge, or install fee, or setup fees, or all those different things that you can add.
Okay.
Flowers, flowers, I would say, is the exception to that. I would say, I know this is everyone charges a little bit differently. And I've seen floral designers that mark things up 4 times, 5 times. I've seen floral designers like only double it, because I'm charging a design fee and setup costs, and I'm making money elsewhere. I tend to only basically do it times 2. So if I've spent like $1,000 in flowers, I would put the floral in there as 2,000.
Great. Okay.
But again, that's only because I'm also charging for install and design fee and other things where we are making money. If I was not charging for those other things, I do think he's marking it up 4 times.
And I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand who are newer in the industry, is that you do have to make money. So if you go out and you shop a competitor, if you have a conversation with a competitor, you can't necessarily just understand their invoice and understand what they're making and their profit, because everybody is going to go through their proposal slightly different. And this bleeds into other categories like planning. So I think by having your profit like insured with a line item of a design fee, like that does then allow you to have more like flexibility in the other areas to like pad it a little bit less and be more transparent about the pricing. So I think that's just like a really good call out for people who are maybe just seeing other proposals come through and don't see a design fee. That just means the profit needs to be baked in other places.
I'll say this too, and I've always taught this way: your pricing will come easier if you've built trust with your client. And so if you have approached it through the mindset of like, I'm going to build a relationship with the client, I'm going to make sure that they know me, they know my heart, they're trusting me, they're not thinking you're price gouging them if you've built that layer of trust amongst them.
Yeah, that's really important. You mentioned something earlier that I wanted to loop back around, and that's staff and labor. How do you, in the like initial kind of proposal, price for that, not knowing how the actual day might come together and how big of a team you might need?
Well, I think it depends on if we're talking about planning versus like floral, because two very, very different things. The planning side of it is okay to start there, or do you want to do?
Yeah, let's do that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I was just on a conversation earlier today with a potential new client who booked me. Super excited about. They're like, well, how many staff members are you going to have? And I was like, I don't know the scope of your wedding yet. I It depends. Like there are some times that the wedding is easy enough. Like I'm doing a wedding in France, and I only in a week we leave for that. And I only need 3 of us there. It'll be great. And I have one local gal coming from France. So there's technically 4 of us there, but I've done other weddings and have another one that's coming up soon where I have 47 staff members working. The scope of that one is much grander and greater, and there's a lot of needs in a very high needs client that wants her hand held all day long.
So you're bringing somebody to hold her hand all day long.
Exactly. So, but for planning purposes, we shifted during the pandemic from charging a flat fee to a percentage-based fee. And so as the scope of the wedding and how much they're paying oftentimes will dictate kind of how involved and complicated the wedding is going to be during setup. Generally, the more they're spending, the more people I need to have there to oversee stuff. If they're spending more money, it's typically more vendors involved, higher end vendors involved. There's just more going on, and we have to have, or there's more people that are attending the wedding. So I have found that as I have charged based on percentage, and the more they spend, typically the grander the wedding becomes, and I'm making more money, then I'm also able to afford the additional staff.
Yeah.
Previously to that, what was happening was someone would hire me and their wedding would start here. And so I would price it out based on the scope of the work that I was hired for. And every single time, if it started here, they would then increase and ask for more and ask for more and ask for more. And then it was rehearsal dinner and welcome dinner and brunch. And they would be like, well, you're already planning my wedding, so what's the big deal? Just do this and do this. And I was working for free. And there were so many weddings that by the time they were done with all their asks, where they started was here and where we ended was here. They were still paying me for here. Because of my reputation and keeping it strong, I had to staff it as if it was here. So all my profit went to staffing it properly. And it's really hard to go and explain to a client, like, you've paid me for this, you've asked for this, I need you to come up here with your payment after the contract's been negotiated. So by doing a wedding based on percentage, it's like, okay, you started here, now you're here, but my percentage
Matches
here too. And you went here and now my percentage. So it's as you increase and ask for more, we make more and more and more money. You can never know the scope of the project at the beginning. People always think they're going to be here. And they always want more, always want more. It's just inevitable.
Yeah. I think that the trend of percentage pricing has started and is definitely becoming more of a norm in the industry, which is great to see, because you can end up getting hosed on a massive wedding and be in the hole because of the staffing side of it and because of your cost. So I know we switched probably about 3 or 4 years ago at the planning company to a percentage pricing because, to your point, like we had some massive weddings that scope creeped like crazy. And, when you see that they're paying a band when you initially had budgeted 10,000 and now they're paying 50,000, you're like, this amount of work is actually doubling for me because I'm flying them in, I'm finding them accommodations. So my fee needs to go up because it's twice as much work. So I think it ensures.
If you're flying them in, you're also then probably finding their instruments, the back line, all the electricity. It's not just some local $10,000 band that comes contained and you're like, hey, glad you're here, go play. You're doing everything from hotel and airfare. Your work is increasing. I think I've heard a lot of people in the industry, and in fact, I was just reading on a forum as I was last week. There were these people talking about like planners who charge a percentage and how they're taking advantage of their clients spending more money. And I'm like, it's such a small mindset, and they're unaware of what goes into actually what goes into planning a luxury event. If they fully understood what we do and the amount of things we have to do, you would understand why we have to charge and increase the fee.
Yeah. And I think it's important too for people that are getting started or maybe don't have like a higher end budget yet, that it's still okay to have percentage pricing, but have a minimum. So you could say, I charge 15, 18%, but my minimum is 10,000. So even if they're coming in with a smaller budget, you still have the protection that if money grows on trees for them and all of a sudden they now have a $200,000 budget, your percentage kicks in. But regardless, you still meet your minimum. So I think that that's an important thing to just like note, that you don't take a 15% fee on a $25,000 wedding. Like you still need your minimum in place.
Exactly. So I have had clients, in fact, I'm working on one right now where their budget, where my minimum is higher than what the percentage would have been for the budget that they're spending. They wanted to work with us and our brand, and they wanted our aesthetic. And so they chose to pay our minimum outside of their wedding budget, but we're working within the budget that they
the constraints.
have.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does as well is it allows me to work on smaller weddings too. Like sometimes I like doing those weddings with only 20 people. They're just as much work, and sometimes more work because you're so hands-on with them. But you're not losing a weekend of potential revenue to, yeah.
And I think I'll be curious what you say for kind of like how you base your percentage on, when I'm planning, or when I was planning, the percentage was on the things that we were handling. So if we were not involved with the rehearsal dinner, like that was not in the budget. If they went and they bought their dress ahead of booking us, or they didn't need me involved, then that was not something that was considered in the budget. But venue, catering, invitations, like all the things that I'm touching and coordinating, transportation, that all got included in the budget. And is that similar to how you've been operating?
Identical to what I do. I also have a very clear and candid conversation with all my clients before they book with me. If I am not at your dress appointment, selecting your dress, telling you how beautiful it is, going from place to place, flying to New York to like watch you try on dresses, like I'm not going to ask what the dress costs so that you can pay me a percentage off of it. Like our integrity in how we price is important. 9 times out of 10, I am selecting the dresses with my clients, and I am there for fittings and things like that. I'm finding their alterations department. We are handling that, so that it would go in the budget. I have some potential clients that say like, okay, well then I'm just going to have you work with these vendors and then I'll find X, Y, and Z. It doesn't work that way. If you sign a contract with me and I'm going to be the one responsible at the end of the day for your wedding, every single vendor that is there on the day of the wedding, I have to have my hands wrapped around. Like, great, you found your dream band. That's step one. That's the easiest step. Now we have to figure out how much power do they need? What instruments do they need? How big of a stage do they need? There's so much that we have to do to work with the band. And if you've planned a wedding, you know that bands can be very needy. Especially the day of the wedding with when their meal is ready. And there's a lot of stuff you have to project manage it. There's a lot of stuff you have to do to be hands-on with every single vendor. I cannot have a single vendor arrive that I have not previously talked with, gone through the schedule with, talked about how their piece of the puzzle fits into the bigger vision. And if they're trying to be sneaky and be like, well, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, I'm like, great, go and book them. I cannot do your wedding unless I'm working with them, and if that's a deal breaker for you, like I can't work with them as a client, and I'm okay passing on that wedding.
Yeah, absolutely. So looping back around, we kind of covered, covering our costs with planning and the full service and charging a percentage, because you do end up, having more wiggle room, for staffing when it's percentage pricing. Floral, how do you look at staffing and pricing it in a proposal?
And again, like I don't know where the wedding, when a client first comes to me, I don't know what the scope of their wedding is going to be. So I also have a minimum for floral. So my clients, when they want to book with me for floral, I say, that's amazing. That's great. This is my minimum, my very minimum spend that you have to have. I'm not going to design your wedding or your flowers or give you a proposal until you hire me. I have always done it this way. So many people in the industry, floral designers, they spend all their time working on proposals for weddings that they never get booked for. And they give the potential client a roadmap to how to create a beautiful wedding for free. And so for me, it's like, you can look at my portfolio, you can see my work. Do you want me to do your wedding? Yes or no? If you do, then you will sign a contract based on my minimum. And then we will, once you pay me my minimum, then we will jump in and we will start working on, tell me your vision. What are you looking for? Like, what's your goal? What's your style? Like, and then as we design the wedding and figure out what the flowers are going to be, and then I come back with a proposal at that point, say, hey, based on what you communicated, this is what this is going to cost. And then I will take another payment based on, so if my minimum was here, but what they were asking for is here, then I'll take another deposit to like aid in the supplies and in getting those things.
And then when it comes to the assistants and paying them actually for the work on the day of, are they all hourly, or do you pay a flat fee for them?
It's a range. I have some people that are on staff and have a salary. I have some people that are on staff and are hourly. I have freelancers that are hourly, and I have some people that are a day rate, and for me, those are the day rate people are the ones that I know are going to work at a slower pace and want to stop and talk. And I don't want to resent them and always be on their case of like,
yeah,
work. Like, if you want to stop and leisurely do your thing, this is few and far between. But if that's how you operate, then I need to pay you a day rate, or I need you to be very productive the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how do you price when the location is, 30 miles outside of the, where you're living in Dallas, or how do you price it when they're flying you to another state or another like country?
Yeah. So travel fees are always separate. I don't charge my clients for like my time while I'm in the air. Like, I'm not doing hourly for, it's a privilege to be able to get, like, leaving for France next week. Like, it's a privilege. And if you want to lose out on opportunities, nickel and dime your clients for every little thing like that. They won't hire you. They just won't. So it's got to be a give take. For my travel fees, what we charge for, and it's in my contract at the beginning, we charge for airfare, we charge for hotel, I charge a food per diem, and I just go with the national average for that. We charge for rental car, we charge for gas,
And so you will
for
take,
luggage too. So
okay.
yeah,
So
like
you'll
my
take,
luggage for France, that's a $5,000 charge because of the amount of bags I'm checking with all the supplies and things like that. It adds up so quickly.
yes. And you'll take all of those costs once they've happened. So you front the money, or do you estimate and then charge them?
So I do all the work. My client knows. I'll usually say, I'm like, okay, today I am working on all of my travel expenses. I'm going to send you an invoice later today that must be paid immediately. It's due today. And so we will agree upon like I'm not going to spring that on them and then they're saying like, oh, I'm on vacation, so sorry. I'll say like, hey, does it work for you and next Monday at this time? Monday and Tuesdays are the best days to book airfare. So I tend to do, and Tuesday's even better than Monday. I don't know why, but that's usually when tickets are the lowest. Weekends are the worst. And so Tuesdays are usually my travel booking days. And so I'll let them know like, hey, I'm working on all my travel for your wedding on Tuesday. I'm going to send you an invoice that evening. I need it to be paid because as I work on travel, sometimes I am fronting the money for some of those tickets and things like that. And I want that money replaced quickly. Other times, you can hold the ticket at the price. And then when the client pays you, then you can do it. Sometimes my travel goes directly on my client's credit card, which is great too, because it's less taxes for me to have to pay. But I'm very transparent with what our travel costs are. And I try to keep my travel costs as low as possible because it is not lost on me that they could have hired someone locally to do the job. Everywhere you go, there are such talented, amazing vendors that would have done an amazing job, as good of a job as me, maybe better. I don't know. There's a lot of talented people out there. And so like, it's not lost to me. So I do try to keep the travel portion as inexpensive as possible.
Okay, I want to ask one more question because you just touched on it about amazing talent in other locations. So this is our last question then. Katie, if you could tee up some of those live Q&As for us, that would be great. Amazing talent is in every market, and you just mentioned that. So talk about kind of building a community, a close-knit community, and like how that has helped grow your business, how you're able to then source like local talent to help you with these weddings, and really what it's done for you as a business owner and your community.
Totally. I'm sorry, my answers are always so long-winded, but there's just so much I want to like unpack and all of that. So there's a lot of different things. For one, social media makes the world a very small place. It really does. So one of the things I like to do, like if I know I'm going to be in the south of France, or if I'm going to be in Lake Como, or if I'm going to be I'm doing a wedding in Boca Grande, Florida, coming up. Wherever I'm going to be, as soon as my client like hires me, I start looking at the local market. I want to see which local vendors can I support. Like I don't want to bring all outside vendors into an area. I really want to support the local market. And so an easy thing to do is to give someone a follow, look at their work, send kind and encouraging messages about their work. And not just like, oh, pretty, like really call out like, wow, look at the intention behind how those pink flowers really pull in the color in the backdrop and like really be intentional with your comments, send direct messages to them. Like, hey, I've been following your work now for the last month. I'm so impressed by what you do. And you can see the heart and character in your business, and engage with them. All humans are similar. Like we respond to people being kind. Like we are all insecure about our work. We are all worried, like, are we going to make it? Like, just because I had a great season last year doesn't mean I'll have another great season. We're all in a place of wondering, like, gosh, am I good at what I do? And I think affirming people and letting them know what you see in their work. And I'm not saying like butter people up and make up false comments. Like I'm saying, like, really find the amazing people whose work inspires you and let them know that, and have it be an authentic conversation, and then watch those relationships grow. So for me, it's been a lot of intentional time on social media, building people up. When I'm in the area, be like, hey, let's grab coffee if you have time, or yeah. So that's usually how I find like the local people. It's through research, online. If they don't have a social media platform, and you can tell by their Instagram, or sorry, their website, that it's someone that you want to work with, then like send them an email, give them a phone call.
Yeah. Great. Cool. All right. Katie, let's hit it with some of those questions that we're streaming in. I know my chat was like going off like crazy, so excited to hear.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you, Steve, so much. This is amazing. And there is a lot of Steve love in the chat. So definitely read that later on today. It'll make you feel so good. So good.
So fun.
But yes, I have pulled a couple questions. You also did such a great job. People were asking questions and then that question would get answered. So here are a few I think that weren't necessarily covered. So first off, we have, how did you get noticed and published by publications? Vogue, Martha Weddings, etc.
It started for me two ways. One, locally, if you have a local magazine, bake them something. If you can't bake, go buy them something, and boldly walk into the front desk and say, is so-and-so available? Because they probably don't want to make an appointment with you ahead of time. They probably don't know who you are. They probably don't care. This is what I did. I literally walked into Seattle Bride magazine with a basket with an amazing liner full of blueberry muffins that I had made for them, and a floral arrangement that I had put together for them, and a note that just said, I am so inspired by your publications. I've been reading them for years. And then I just say, like, I think I said, someday I hope to be part of your magazine. Thanks for inspiring so many of us with what you do. And then I asked the front desk person, like, hey, is this person available? And they're like, oh, they're not seeing anyone today. And I was like, well, can I just leave them for them? And inside the card, I had my business card, and I just left it. And I'm like, I hope it makes their way to them. And by the time I got home, I had an email from the editor saying like, thank you so much. I received this. The flowers are beautiful. Those are the best muffins I've ever had. I'd love to learn more about your business. We had a phone call. Next thing I knew, I was like in their offices again. Next thing I know, I was planning their fashion shoots there. So again, it started with intentional relationships, an act of kindness, generosity, like finding ways to be generous. So that's how it started. With Martha Stewart, similarly, I boldly, and this takes boldness. Like, and do you feel like a loser? Will you maybe get rejected? Absolutely, 100%. But what I did was Martha Stewart was coming to town. She was signing cookbooks. In fact, I have it on my shelf over here. She was signing cookbooks. It was pouring down rain. I stood in line for 3 hours in the rain. I looked like a drowned rat. By the time it was my turn, you were not allowed to give Martha Stewart anything. They had a big black trash bag. They're like, if you brought anything for Martha, just put it in here. We're collecting everything. We'll make sure she gets it. And I'm like, I'm no dummy. I see the trash bag. Like all that stuff is going straight to the dumpster. So I was like, I didn't bring anything for her, but I did. I had like a beautiful letter. I had photos of my work, business card, handwritten letter. It was wax sealed, beautifully presented. When it was my turn to have her sign my book, before I gave her my book, I gave her my stuff. Her bodyguards came to try to take it away. And she shooed them away. She opened it. She looked through my photos. She commented on the thickness of my business card. And she was like, I will have my editors call you. And they did. They called me the next week. But it started with boldness, taking a risk, taking a chance. And then once they called me, they rejected me for about 5 or 6 years before they actually put me in the magazine. My work was never good enough. They called me out on copying what was in their magazines. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. That is an exact replica. Embarrassing moment for me. They said, no, boring, not good enough. This is ugly, like hate the colors, uninspired. They were ruthless to me. And then one day they picked me up. And so you just have to be persistent, not annoying, persistent, and go for it, and just keep trying.
I think one of the things that's hard is that you will never know what the editors are looking for, but they're looking for something. And it could be a shade of blue. It could be, a theme or whatever it is. But so you have to have persistence. You have to keep submitting. You can't get discouraged just because one year you didn't hear back or you got rejected. And then I think to your point is like, do not underestimate your local market. Because even if you focus all of your energies on the Martha Stewart, when they go to look at your work, they're also looking to where you've been published before. And that has a lot of clout too. So
I'll just tell you this too. Being in Martha Stewart hurt my business for quite a while because people just assumed that my business was here and they could not afford me. And so people that could very much afford me, they were like, oh, he's untouchable. Why would he ever want to do my wedding? So the local market is your place where you're going to see direct success a lot more quickly. But Great. Also, can I just say to know your person that you are submitting to, like understand, like if you are submitting like, well, I think Martha Stewart needs more boho weddings. Like it's not their style. Like know and understand the brand and fit what you've done to the brand of that particular publication. Vogue is not going to take a certain thing unless it has a certain aesthetic. And so you have to be mindful and intentional about where you're submitting things to.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We have time.
Okay. Next one. I liked this one. What are your industry standards?
My industry standards. Ooh. Do you mean for pricing or what?
Right? Like it's so, maybe just go with like pricing and then, I think let's keep it pricing.
Okay. That's a hard one. Percentage based. I would say if you are newer to the industry, 12 to 15%. I would say if you are established, but not top tier, and I would say probably 15 to 18%. And then I would say the top tier wedding planners are charging 20 to 22%.
Yeah, I think that's like an amazing range for people here to just take away. So I think I appreciate you sharing that.
When it comes to flowers and stuff like that, I mean, there's such a range, and that gets into like, how are you pricing? Are you doing design fee? Are you doing like just marking things up? But I would say marking things up 3 to 4 times, that is, yeah.
If you're not doing a design fee, then have a 3 to 4x markup on your cost. Yeah. Okay, great. All right, Katie, one more.
Yeah. So someone wants to know about marketing costs, and that is an area we didn't touch here. It says, how and where do you advertise, and how do you determine a budget for marketing?
$0 spent on marketing, to be honest. I haven't spent a dime on marketing in over 10 years. Social media is, I think, it's free. And I think being intentional over there, my money that I would have spent on marketing, I put right back into real weddings. And so I have a wedding coming up where their budget isn't as high as I want it to be for as amazing as they are and as amazing as their wedding. I really want to make it great for them. So instead of like putting money towards a magazine ad that may or may not bring me anything, I'm going to spend that money on their wedding. I'm going to make a real bride really, really happy. I'm going to make their guests have the experience of their lifetime. I'm going to have a bride that goes and sings about me and brags about me and has just has a lot to say good things, and guests that walk away being like, oh my gosh, I've never been to a wedding like that before. So that's where my marketing money goes. And word of mouth is the best marketing that you could ever have. You then also get great photos that you can use on social media. So if you have a wedding that is here, you're like, oh, they have an awesome photographer and a great venue, and I love her dress and I love her personality or his personality or whoever it is, and it's the right combination, invest into them and watch how that just like explodes in front of you.
I cannot agree more with that. Is that,
I don't know if this has to end at 1 hour. I know sometimes webinars do, but like if you want to do, I can take time for another question or two if you.
One thing with that mention, I think we are so referral heavy. And if you do not have business yet, like you're just getting started, another great place to spend a little bit of money that can go a long ways is on an inspiration shoot. You can meet with vendors. You could actually also take vendors out to lunch or coffee. Like these are the ways and to get images for your website or social, and also to create connections with the vendors that are not just going to like an ad or, an Instagram, boosted post that you don't really see a whole lot of return on.
On that note, I would also say too, like if you are starting out or like a year or two in the industry, find other vendors that you can grow your businesses together. A lot of the people that I am closest with in this industry, we started out around the same time and we have grown together. I'll tell you what's irritating is when my inbox is full of people who have been in business for 30 seconds. And then they think that like, I'm going to drop everything I'm doing and pay for this shoot so that they can photograph it. They're trying to use me and my name and what I've built over the last 21 years so that they can automatically propel to the top. And it's vendors are not interested. It's not because we're being snobby. It's not because we don't want to like build you up. It's because we are very busy.
We already did it. We put in our time doing inspiration shoots and coffee dates and lunches and
So grow together, create work that we have never, ever seen. There are so many new people in this industry where I look at their work and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm so inspired by that. Like look at the fresh thing that they're doing. Look at their perspective. So be that person.
Can I ask just one question to kind of just jog my memory about something? COVID, like coming out of COVID, we saw prices just like skyrocket and go crazy. And so from like inspiration shoots, to actual like wedding days, like how did you handle when things changed for you? Like when prices from a frog went from $20 when you initially, made the proposal to like $60, when you went to execute the wedding.
Totally. So it goes back to like how I am pricing things out. And I'll just say it's all my friends who price everything up at the beginning, and then go like a year and then execute. A lot of them went out of business, and a lot of them just made zero money, or their partners, their life partners, paid for the wedding itself. Like because their businesses were not profitable, and they just kind of failed. So when my clients come to me, remember, like they are paying a retainer with a minimum. The proposal that they actually get is not going to be until much closer to the wedding. This is what caterers do as well. Caterers have a line item that says your food will be priced to you at market value, because fish might go from whatever price it is to salmon has jumped up in price like exponentially, and they're not going to lose money. So why should we, the floral designers who are working our tail off, I think one of the hardest working vendors in the entire industry are floral designers. Like we work so hard, like we don't get a break. And as soon as the wedding's over, we're cleaning and prepping, and we work so hard. So why should we have to suffer because everything else is more expensive? So as you get closer to the wedding, and as you know your client, you've built trust, you've designed the wedding, you've let it kind of marinate, and you've worked through it, then you come back a couple months before the wedding. Like right now, I'm sending the proposals for my summer weddings, and we're just like 2 or 3 months away. And so I've met with them, I've worked with them, like we're talking about pricing. I've sent them like initial things, but I've let them know, like, I don't know the price of flowers until really 2 or 3 weeks before. And so this is going to have to adjust a little bit. We're having those conversations.
Yeah. And it's not as big of a shock, to your point, when you have your design fee as a percentage. So they're not watching maybe something that you had talked about costing $100 go up to $300. You're having it go from $1 to $125, because they're actually seeing the real costs,
Yes.
of the like part, baked in
Exactly.
cost of the chicken fire and things like that. So I think that points then again to like your design fee doesn't change, and it's the percentage, and they know what they're going to pay on the total. So that the little changes along the way are not a huge shock at the proposal stage.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we have gone over by a few minutes. So I just want to wrap up and say thank you so much, everybody, for coming and listening to all of these wonderful tips and tricks. And thank you so much, Steve, for your time and your just generosity with all of your industry knowledge. You truly are just such a force, and we're grateful to share this space with you. Be sure to follow along Rock Paper Coin on Instagram and Sinclair and Moore on Instagram, and then we will follow up with everybody over email with a link. And so just a big heartfelt thank you, and we will be in touch.
Can I just say one last thing too? If you guys can let us know, like I'd love to maybe do more of these sessions with Rock Paper Coin. So like if you guys have topics, you're like teach on this or teach on that, would you send a message to on Instagram to Rock Paper Coin and to myself? Just be like, hey, this is what I would love to learn. Maybe we can do another one of these next month or every other month or something.
We'd
So
love it.
we'd love to do it for you guys and teach what we can.
Yeah. All right. Well, stay tuned for that. Thank you so
All right.
much, everyone.
Thanks a lot.